Welcome to the Fort Johnson podcast. This week, we're dedicating our show to the Medal of Honor Month, a time when we pay homage to the extraordinary valor and sacrifice of the remarkable individuals who have received our nation's highest military honor. From the battlefields of the past to the enduring spirit of courage, each story of a Medal of Honor recipient is a testament to the resilience, bravery, and honor that define the very best of what it means to serve. Join us as we honor these heroes, explore their stories, and remember their sacrifices they made to ensure our freedoms. Let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you are watching this podcast, I am Jeff England from the Fort Johnson Public Affairs Office, and you're watching the Fort Johnson podcast from the Fort Johnson Podcast Studios. With me today, I've got three very special guests with me, all retired Army soldiers. Today, we've got with us retired Lieutenant Colonel Mark Leslie. How are you doing?
Great, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's getting. I mean, I'm trying like pretty hard to spit all these words out, and I just keep getting tongue-tied. I guess it's just still a little off-putting to see such greatness in one studio.
Yeah, it's humbling.
Yes. And alongside Mr. Leslie, we've got Command Sergeant Major retired Chris Osmond. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here.
Great to have you in here. And sitting next to me, I've got retired Sergeant Major. Let me get you on there. There we go. Now we can see you. We got retired Sergeant Major Matt West. Welcome to the show. Appreciate you showing up.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
It's great to have you all in here. We've got we got all kinds of stuff. We've got the Medal of Honor month, and apparently around here we honor them so much that we're naming streets after the our recipients. Or is there a policy, not a policy, but thing that we're following by who gets the streets named after them?
Yeah, actually, these streets were named when it was then Fort Polk. These streets were actually named after those Medal of Honor recipients when it was formed. We just did something special this year to memorialize those streets a little different than any other installation in the Army. We'll kind of talk about that a little later on in the podcast.
I think that is I think it's awesome to get, to honor our soldiers and our forebearers of, you know what I'm trying to say.
So the one thing I would say is what's good is, March is, we focus on Medal of Honor, and it goes back to our history. So 25 March every year is Medal of Honor Day. And it goes back to our first recipient, which was Jacob Parrott from the U.S. From the Civil War. 1863, he was awarded on 25 March Medal of Honor, and we're highlighting that. We want to highlight and remember those heroes, and so that's why we're doing a lot of stuff on this installation. As you spoke earlier, it's the highest award for military valor in action. Action being the key word. These men and women were put in harm's way, and they stood to sacrifice and made a difference that it reflects in our country today.
Now, I've seen, I know you three have seen combat, and I bet you've seen some pretty heroic stuff going on in combat, and you have not seen people reach the level of heroism that, these people that have received the Medal of Honor must have done something crazy.
I would counter that. I'm not going to say that I did not see people.
Well, I'm not saying that you didn't see the heroism. I'm just saying just not that what I
was going to say is I'm not going to say that I didn't see that level of heroism. The individuals that we saw do those acts just were not awarded the Medal of Honor. The Medal of Honor is being conspicuous gallantry in the face of the enemy, and ultimately that's. When you put a packet together and it goes all the way through, and you have to understand that even in the past several years, a policy was set out that said anyone that received a Silver Star or above were to be resubmitted to be reviewed for possible awarding of the Medal of Honor.
I did not know that.
And based off of that, there were plenty of actions that those transferred from being a Silver Star Distinguished Service Cross into the Medal of Honor.
Oh, wow.
Probably the last 8 or 9 awardees, recipients received that.
That is crazy. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think we were talking before the podcast, and like you said, Jeff, all 3 of us see combat multiple times in different theaters, and we've seen a lot of heroics, but I think that speaks to the standard for the Medal of Honor, right? So, out of the millions of people that have served in combat, and the millions or hundreds of thousands of heroic acts that men and women have committed in combat, only 3,517 Medal of Honors have been awarded since it was created. That speaks volumes about those men that have been awarded that medal on behalf of the nation as a symbol of gratitude. What else could you say, right? 3,517 out of the millions that have served in combat. That's a pretty high standard.
That's like less than 1%.
That's 0.0000103%.
That's less than 1,000th of 1%. That's crazy, considering what we have 397 million people in America, and what 3,000? You said
3,517.
That's crazy.
Since its creation,
and that's since the 1800s.
Since March 25th, 1863. Yep.
Oh wow, that's not very many, and even fewer.
That's a pretty high standard.
That's a high standard. Luckily, I was actually lucky to meet a Medal of Honor recipient, and it was really cool. He let me check out his medal and everything, and he said a nice little trivia question behind that is, what's printed on the back of the Medal of Honor? He goes, if anyone asks you what's printed on the back of a Medal of Honor, it's their name and the dates and stuff. So it's actually inscribed, and none of my medals have ever been inscribed with my name on it. I was lucky to get them.
Well, speaking on that, I mean, that's one thing a lot of people take for granted, because you tend to put the Medal of Honor recipients on a pedestal, rightfully so, right? You should. But I think all of us have. I know I've had the privilege to sit on LPDs with 2 Medal of Honor recipients, one of them being Lieutenant General retired Foley, and then Michael E. Thornton. You had one from the Army. General Foley was a captain in Vietnam and in the infantry. And then you had Mr. Thornton was a petty officer in the Navy. And just to listen to their stories, they're real down-to-earth people. You think, a hero, they walk on water, everything else. That's not the aspect. Just to sit and listen to them and listen to their story and understand it from their perspective is amazing. And I would recommend anybody that has the opportunity to meet a Medal of Honor recipient and just learn some of the lessons that they have, highly encourage it. Some of the things that we're doing, obviously we're doing a podcast today to talk about Medal of Honor or Medal of Honor recipients. We'll be on the radio on Monday, on 18 March, doing the same thing. We're trying to educate the soldiers' families and retirees here, but also educate our community, because we serve in a veteran community. We also have our town hall, which is going to start at 1700 on Monday, on 18 March, Palmetto housing area. And we talked about the street signs. So what we have on the installation is previous, when it was Fort Polk, there was 10 streets named on the installation after Medal of Honor recipients. 5 of those streets are actually in Palmetto, where the walking town hall is going to take place. And what we'll do is we'll unveil one of the signs, which is Diamond Street, to recognize all the Medal of Honor signs. So what we've done is with our partnership with Corvius, they had the signs remade. They're not renamed. We didn't rename the streets, but we had the signs remade, and they actually put the Medal of Honor logo on the signs to help educate the people that live on that street. Hey, there's some importance on the street that you live in. That's why it's named that, and it's helping with our messaging that we have across the installation. And then the garrison commander on the 22nd is going to be at the library. He's going to be reading books to children. The book that he's going to be reading is The Making of a Hero. It's a children's book, and it's going to focus on 6 Medal of Honor recipients. So we strongly encourage anyone and everybody to get out there, and if you can listen to one of the podcasts or the radio or attend the walking town hall with us, everything else, let's get out there and remember our heroes. And if you can't get out there, go to our website, JRTC and Fort Johnson website. We have a Medal of Honor page, and we we highlight all of our Medal of Honor recipients that are either accredited to or from Louisiana, which is 29.
Now, the streets, are the streets also named after Louisiana recipients?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'd like to expand on that a little bit. So this is pretty cool. This is a first for the Army. So Fort Johnson will be the only installation in the world that has the Medal of Honor logo on their on the street sign. So you can go anywhere else in the country, and you're not going to see a street sign in a housing area that has the Medal of Honor on it.
You know, I think we should put that on the Fort Johnson sign too, since it's named after Sergeant Johnson, Medal of Honor recipient.
Yeah.
From World War One. You know, there's World War One was a harsh war
Yes.
too,
Don't,
and he was crazy.
don't be stealing my thunder.
Oh, fine, I'll let you talk.
That's a tribute to our Corvius partners because Chris reached out to them, and when he talked to them, they said sure, we'll be glad to support that, and they funded that and said sure, and
Oh,
they did
that's
that.
great.
Yeah, that was great. They're like, heck yeah, that's a good idea, and they did that, and so thanks to our Corvius partners for doing that. It was a good effort on their part. Good partnership there, and relationships matter. They supported us on that.
One alibi with what's going on in the installation I forgot to mention, because we work on partnerships on this installation, is we have AAFES is going to have a display up from the 18th to the 25th, which will be highlighting all the 29 Medal of Honor recipients from Louisiana.
Oh, nice. So we got the thanks to Corvius, great job. And so you were going to say something?
Well, before I get into Henry William Johnson, there's some other facts and stuff that people may not know about the Medal of Honor, and they already mentioned who the first Medal of Honor recipient was. However, the last Medal of Honor recipient was Captain Larry Taylor, a Vietnam veteran who received the award in September of this past year. However, sadly, he passed away just this past month at the age of 91. So, but out of the medals, the 3rd Infantry Division has the most awarded Medals of Honor.
Oh, wow.
61. Out of those 3,517, 61 were awarded to people within that division, mostly during World War II. And then you have to look at the big picture when you look at the total number of medals. The Army outweighs everybody else on Medal of Honor recipients with 2,461 of those 3,500 that we discussed. But one key one, and you mentioned it, was going in and discussing about World War I. And as we know, our nation's landscape has changed dramatically over the years. And back during World War I, African-American service members were not treated the same as everybody else. And when Private William Henry Johnson, he went just by Henry Johnson, and that's what's actually on the website. His name is Henry Johnson as it was initially awarded. But Henry Johnson was deployed over to France with the 369th Infantry Regiment of the 93rd Infantry Division. And he and another African-American service member they kept them together, and the American forces really didn't want them on their lines, so they handed them off to the French. One evening on May 15th, during combat operations, they were serving as sentinels on one end of the line or one of the flanks, and a party of about 12 German soldiers decided they were going to try to capture an American soldier, gain intel and so forth. They began their attack. When the attack concluded, all ammunition had been expended from the 2 American service members. All grenades were expended, and his partner got pretty much grievously wounded and was being carried away by a couple of the Germans. So at the time, Private Johnson said, well, we're not going to have any of that. So he pulled out his knife and began going into hand-to-hand combat and fighting with his knife, rescued his partner, and got him back across friendly lines. There's some key things that people don't know, and you have a lot of people wondering, why did Fort Polk, name this installation out of somebody that's not from Louisiana? And as most people on this podcast know, that what we do here at the Joint Readiness Training Center and, of course, Fort Johnson is we conduct monthly rotations where soldiers from all over the Army come here to train prior to deploying overseas. Some of the key attributes that we try to ingrain in these soldiers are personal courage, selfless service, honor, and loyalty. Henry Johnson possessed all of those. He was also the first American to earn the Croix de Guerre, which is the French's almost their French version of a Medal of Honor. The first American, not the first African American, not the first American to receive one. And that is one reason why we renamed Fort Polk to Fort Johnson. Last thing about Fort Johnson, and is probably the key crux of this whole thing, is this is the only Army installation in the Army inventory that is named after an enlisted service member.
That's so I was going to ask that.
Only one. So
That's pretty cool.
that's why we're named Fort Johnson.
Well, that's cool. The and we do have the whole renaming ceremony up on YouTube to mark that, and we got a really nice video that explains or that tells the story of what he did to receive that. It was like they were afraid of him. I would.
Well,
I mean,
his nickname was the Black Death.
Yeah.
All right, so I would like to not caveat, but just add one other thing, that after the naming ceremony, I had the honor of being responsible for William Henry Johnson's Medal of Honor for 2 months that we put on display every single day, every single work day, out in the foyer of our post headquarters. Additionally, we had some individuals from the Sergeant Audie Murphy Club, by the way, another Medal of Honor recipient, but the Sergeant Audie Murphy Club that guarded the medal during our ceremonies and so forth. And so we allowed those individuals to return the medal back to New York, where it is hung in honor now. It used to be at the state headquarters, but now it is down in the 369th Infantry headquarters at their armory. And so we were able to send those guys up TDY to return the medal.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. That would be such an honor too.
So that, which was sad, he came back and was unable to get the medical attention he needed for his wounds. He was wounded 21 times during that battle.
And didn't quit.
And did not quit, and saved his friend. And so it wasn't until 1996 he was awarded his Purple Heart. In 2003, they awarded him the Distinguished Service Cross. And then finally in 2015, it was upgraded and he was awarded the Medal of Honor. And it was presented to the Command Sergeant Major of the 42nd Infantry Division out of New York National Guard.
Nice.
Chris, you want to talk about PFC Diamond?
I do. So, like we talked about with the walking town hall, where we're going to recognize the streets that are with the new signs that were updated. The first area where we're going to start our walking town hall, and we're going to unveil Diamond Street. And Diamond, his full name, is James H. Diamond. He was a private first class, and he was in World War II. He was with the 24th Infantry Division, and his Medal of Honor action date was May 14th, 1945. And what I would tell you is when you look through multiple Medal of Honor recipients write-up, you see the same thing. You see the hostile fire. You see their ability to move towards the enemy, to protect their battle buddies to the left and to the right. And what you see is whether they're morally wounded or wounded and continue to fight. And essentially that's what you see with Diamond. World War II, under heavy gunfire during a battle, he was wounded in action and kept moving. He was wounded in action and then continued on to the next day and led a patrol to secure a bridge, where he was eventually mortally wounded. Just the heroism. One of the things we talked about before, was the Medal of Honor. When they put it on their chest, what's it mean to them? You spoke earlier about the name on the back. Just to see the medal evolve over the years, when you look into the history, what's on the front of the medal? It's 3 variations to the Medal of Honor. You have Army, Air Force, and Navy. On two of the branches, Army and Navy, you have the Minerva, was the god of war and wisdom, is placed on that medal, and then the Air Force, with the latest edition on the front of their medal, has the Statue of Liberty. But it's unique when you compare the medal to the actions that you see with Diamond and all these heroes that we're speaking about today.
It's really amazing just to know a little bit about the medal.
I don't think any of these guys were thinking, "Hey, I'm doing this act to receive the Medal of Honor."
No, those usually don't get them.
Yeah. We focused on we're focusing on these 10 streets, and so we kind of each picked one of these gentlemen to talk about that one of these streets are memorialized in one of these Medal of Honor recipients. And I'm glad you're not using the word winner.
No, I
We're
learned
using the word
Not a-
recipient.
not a
it
race.
is a
It's
recipient.
not an athletic competition. It's a
Now, I
recipient.
do. That's the question I was going to ask. Does Congress still have to approve this? Is it still a Congress approved? Because I remember it used to be called the Congressional Medal of Honor,
Well,
but it's not really. That.
Actually, it was never actually called the Congressional
Oh
Medal.
well,
of Honor.
fine. Then correct me on my
Well,
own show.
I'm going to. So it is the Congressional Medal of Honor Society that was enacted by Congress to manage and to cover, to follow and to remember and to honor all of the Medal of Honor recipients. Up until I believe it was 1953, it required congressional approval. If I'm not, if you may have the dates or if I'm
You're right.
incorrect, but
No, you go.
up until 1953, it required congressional approval. But then with the transfer and becoming the Department of Defense, that happened in the late 40s, early 50s, they transferred that. And it is a presidential requirement that the president must approve once it's been processed. But DOD manages and approves all of them. That's why when they reached out to bring these other ones up, they established a panel that were able to convert individuals with Silver Stars to Single Service Crosses and so forth to earn the Medal of Honor.
Nice. And so, each one of you have a different street that you're dedicating today.
Yeah. So the guy I chose was First Lieutenant Doug Fournay, and I picked him because he was in my regiment that I served in Fort Hood. So he was in First Squadron, 7th Cavalry, and I was in 7th Cavalry in Fort Hood, and he was in. I'm sure most people have seen the movie. You know, We Were Soldiers, and I was in that unit, and
Not during We Were Soldiers.
not during We Were Soldiers. Thank you. I'm not that old, but I was in that unit, and a very rich history. But he was in that unit in that battle, and First Lieutenant Fournay was a platoon leader, and like Chris said, he risked his life for those in his command. So he was coming up. They were approaching a fortified enemy position. They noticed a command detonated claymore. That his platoon was in imminent danger. They saw the wire. He rushed up. They were under fire. He rushed up and saw the wire. They knew it was going to be detonated. He rushed up to cut the wire, and didn't make it to cut the wire, but covered the claymore. This was a homemade, like
Like an IED.
like an IED almost. Covered the claymore with his body and saved the rest of the platoon. 5 were slightly wounded, but he saved the rest of the platoon. It's an act of
Like
selfless service. I mean, he sacrificed himself for the rest of the platoon. I mean, what more is there to say about?
Yeah, I hear the stories about people throwing themselves on a grenade, and that one's even worse than a grenade with a claymore.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And this guy, I actually visited his grave. It's right here in Oberlin. As you're heading towards Kinder, you make a right and you go to the Oberlin area. It's if you've never been to a Medal of Honor recipient's gravesite, they make it special, and it's a little country graveyard or cemetery, but that gravesite stands out, and they make it special, and it's very it's a proper homage to an American hero.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got. So what street did you get?
So I didn't pick a street. I decided to do all of Fort Johnson, and that's why I gave his story. Did you have any other streets that you were going to discuss? We did have another person that was supposed to be on the show that was going to talk about a street, but
Yeah, so not a street, but I want to highlight one of the latest Medal of Honor recipients that's accredited in Louisiana. You have Captain Paris D. Davis. He was awarded March 3rd of 24. 5th Special Forces Group. He's one of the 63 living recipients, which is good. And I said he's accredited to New Orleans. He was in Special Forces and doing what special. He was in 5th Special Forces Group, leading a patrol, and then they came under contact. Very similar outcome as that we spoke about earlier. Comes into contact, starts to lead the element forward into the fire, like most of our Medal of Honor recipients. He's wounded. He's wounded in the leg. Continues to move, refuses medical treatment, executes a counterattack, wounded again. Continues to move forward until they expelled the enemy that day. So it tells a lot about a person's character that's willing to run towards the gunfire, but then they get hit, and they take a knee, execute a counterattack, get hit again, and continue to move forward. That's a hero in my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, the movies that they make about these people are made for a reason, because there's enough action in there and enough storyline and, to just fill up an entire movie. There, there's I can't even remember the names, but you've got the one sergeant that took an entire platoon or company or something like that captive of Nazi soldiers.
It's you're talking World War I, Alvin York.
Sergeant York, that's the one. And then there was another one that refused to carry a gun. He was like a conscientious objector.
Just one more.
Yeah, that one.
So it's funny because Chris led right into what I was about to talk about next. Is there was a time frame that, again, they were not using the Medal of Honor in the proper way, in the proper respect. During the Civil War, the Secretary of War, Edwin M. Stanton, promised a Medal of Honor to every man in the 27th Maine Volunteer Infantry Regiment who extended their enlistment past their separation date. The Battle of Gettysburg was imminent. 311 men of the regiment volunteered to serve until the battle was resolved. The remaining men returned to Maine, and with the Union victory at Gettysburg, the 311 soon followed. They arrived back in Maine in time to be discharged with the men who had returned earlier. Since there seemed to be no official list of the 311 volunteers, the War Department exacerbated the situation by forwarding 864 medals to the commanding officer of the regiment. The commanding officer only issued the medals to the volunteers who stayed behind and retained the others on the grounds that if he returned the remainder to the War Department would try to reissue the medals. Well, in 1916, a board of 5 Army generals on the retired list convened under the Act of Law to review every Army Medal of Honor awarded. The board was reported on the Medal of Honors for any cause other than distinguished conduct by an officer and enlisted man in the action involving actual conflict with an enemy. The commission, led by Nelson A. Miles, identified 911 awards for cause other than distinguished conduct. This included 864 medals awarded to the members of the 27th Maine Regiment. All of those were rescinded.
Dang.
And were pulled back. That shows the significance and the purpose of why we have the Medal of Honor and the honor and integrity of that medal and who it's being awarded to.
It is. It is a major. I mean, with less than 1,000% getting it, and you said there's only 63 living.
63 living recipients.
And so there's only 63 of them now. I mean, alive right now. So the odds of somebody meeting them is just extraordinary, and it's just. Every time I hear a story about the Medal of Honor or a recipient of the Medal of Honor, it always impresses me. It never fails. And just like you guys coming in and taking part in our podcast, that always impresses me too.
One of the things when I was stationed at Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, multiple times, and I got to know Colonel Nett, Robert Nett. He was a Medal of Honor recipient from Korea. And I got to have breakfast with him quite often, and I got to take my son to have breakfast with him. He was young then; he's in the Army now, non-commissioned officer. And my son still remembers getting to meet Colonel Nett, a Medal of Honor recipient. And that's he still cherishes that memory. Colonel Nett he passed several years ago, but he still remembers getting to talk to that guy and sit at the breakfast table, and he was just awed by. And Colonel Nett wouldn't tell him gory war stories, but he would tell him lessons learned. And my son still remembers those.
Yeah,
how humble, and how he's like, Dad, he's just like a normal guy. I'm like, he's an ordinary man placed in extraordinary circumstances. So,
yeah,
that's what Colonel Nett tried to pass on to him.
Yeah, it is something that will stick with you. I mean, I remember meeting Medal of Honor recipient, and it's very cool. So, well, I'd like to thank all of you for coming in and speaking with us, and us as in the podcast, and I hope to have you back again. I'm sure I'll have somebody in here soon for the weather.
Yes,
getting ready for the weather this summer.
It's going to be a dicey season.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to leave you with a couple things. So on Medal of Honor Day, our PAO team created a excellent video that we're going to be that will be released, unveiled on that day as well, right, Jeff?
Sure.
Yes. It's a great video. It's going to be unveiled on that day. If you want to learn more about what's happening on the installation, there was an article in the E-Guardian and the Vernon Parish Journal published an article. You can check those out. And then if you want to learn more about the Medal of Honor itself, the Medal of Honor webpage, cmoh.org, Chris?
Correct.
And then the Medal of Honor Museum has a web page as well, and that's going to be open. I think it's in Spring, Texas, and it'll be open in spring of 2025. It's going to be an awesome place. If you haven't checked that out, it's available on the web as well.
It's great. And once again, just thank you guys for coming in, and I hope to have you back here soon. There's always a seat open here at the Fort Johnson podcast. And I'm Jeff England from the Fort Johnson Public Affairs Office, and I appreciate you coming in. Leave a comment, leave a message, and subscribe, and hit that notification button, and we'll be listening at you later.
That was easy.